Nabeil is the co-founder of Forma.AI. First of all, before we get into it, how many people here have heard of Forma? Okay. Would like more people to know, but why don't you explain what Forma is?
So we are an AI-powered sales comp platform. Okay. What does that mean? What it means is today there's 15 million sales reps in the US alone, and large enterprises that have tens of thousands of sellers will incentivize them the same regardless of who they're selling to, what they're selling, where they're selling, and we don't actually individualize based off of the profile of the rep and the difficulty in the sale that they're making. And so the whole premise that I thought of was we are incentivized individually every single day. We pull open our social media platforms, our news feeds are individualized, okay. Is it better? Yeah. Way better, okay. So every day the incentives are individualized for us, loyalty platforms, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, it was like, why do we think about that in such a radically different way for sales? It's because it's limited. And so the whole premise behind Forma was to individualize sales compensation at mass. And to do that, you have to think about it in an autonomous way. And so effectively, we're the autonomous sales comp machine.
So we'll be very COVID friendly and keep on switching the mics. We check them every time, and they never seem to work once you start using them. Anyways, so loved idea. So did you just come out of this? Graduate from undergrad and come up with this idea? Like, what was the path to coming and starting Forma?
So, no, it was not I don't think you wake up and think, I'm going to do sales comp. I think I'd be surprised if someone did. But I went into management consulting and effectively working with Fortune 500s on helping them solve this exact problem. And my background previously is I had started a company when I was at Queen's University. And after realizing that, okay, I built a lifestyle business, but it wasn't a business that I thought it could scale, and I needed more. Basically, I just realized I need to learn from people that run large companies before I can try to do this on my own. And so I actually went management consulting, did that, saw firsthand how bad it was, left and joined a loyalty startup, Spoonity, that the co-founder of Spoonity was actually my co-founder in the business that we had at Queen's. And so I joined him, and you think about this loyalty space, and what they're trying to do was to bring loyalty to the masses in terms of, at that time was only Starbucks. That was the loyalty program, and so they were bringing it effectively to other SMBs. And when I was there, I realized, oh my God, we have so much data available to us. There has to be a better way to do sales comp, and that's where the idea effectively originated.
Okay, so I want to break that down into 3 different sections, because, there's some myth of, being a founder. You don't need you don't need learning before, but you go. If anyone wants to invent a microphone and audio-visual system that works, I'll be the first investor. So it's interesting. You started your first company in Queens, and you said it was a lifestyle company. So what does that mean, and how do you know it's not going to scale up?
So lifestyle is I feel like we built a self-sustaining, it was a profitable business. I grew it to, at one point we had 8 full-time employees, and I just didn't see a path to scale, or at least didn't know how. Like, to give you guys an example, actually in 2009, my co-founder and I, Max, effectively started leasing websites to small businesses in the Kingston area. So instead of, we realized okay, we had this custom software dev shop, but we would get requests to build websites. We'd give them the price, and they'd be sticker shock because they're small businesses. At that time, you had to prove the value of having a website to these businesses. And so it was, let's start a website leasing. Now, this is before Wix. And I look back at that very, very specifically because I had the idea, Max and I actually executed on building out the pricing, the structure. We built the automations in the back end. We just didn't have the experience to know this is how you go about. And I say this we just were not ready to execute on scaling that business. You can have an idea, but do you have the experience? And I think a part of that is, the kind of the typical business know of how to actually go and target and sell to investors, sell to customers, and scale beyond that. But The second thing is the network that you have around you. And I think that's, maybe skipping a few steps here, but when I started Forma, I mean, whether it's TechTO or, through the DMZ or Communitech, all the different, resources that you had at your disposal when you were building in a community goes so far. Like, I don't know, I think, I'll touch on one thing. I used to go to Communitech once a week. We would drive, this is back before the virtual meetings. We got into Communitech's Accelerator program, and we would drive once a week in traffic to Waterloo for a 1-hour meeting with an advisor and come back. And I kid you not, every day that week when I'd go, and we did this for like 3 months, and I'd get in the car and I'd be like, I can't believe we're doing this. This is the worst. Like, I don't know if this is efficient use of time. I have so many things to do. And then we'd get there and we'd leave completely like Miles Lane and was on one of the early founding team members, and so him and I would be going there, and we got advice from a go-to-market advisor, and we'd come back and it would just be like, okay, we're going to rethink everything that we're doing and reapply it, and I think that is critical. So that's at that point, I think I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the know-how, and there's these ideas like this that we missed out on executing on, and so at one point I was like, I either continue growing this small business or I wanted to do something bigger, and I realized to do that I had to get the foundational knowledge, which management consulting did a great job. I worked at a firm, ZS Associates, and it's like you get this like little apprenticeship where in the first year you just get, like, I came in, I was running a business, and I came in and I was like, I don't think I'm qualified to do this job, and you learn on the job, and you learn how to present yourself, how to talk to senior leadership, and anyways, yeah. I think it was a very different experience having started a business after I had done that.
Interesting, and you jumped to my next question about consulting. So you did get something out of consulting then. Okay. We've actually had a lot of founders that are ex-consultants, so it's interesting. Let's talk about, so you had an idea, you saw all this data, and you said, oh, we can use this data to help figure out how to compensate salespeople. So what was the first step to actually starting Forma? So you had this idea, you were working for your buddy at his startup, so you just like say, fuck it, I'm out of here, or like, what did you do?
Yeah, so funny enough, I actually left, and I wasn't going to go into sales comp. Like, I was like, this is a thankless job, right? Who here has thanked their payroll person? No one, ever, right? Like, you get mad at them, but yeah. So it's one of those things where I didn't actually leave to go into it. What ended up happening was there was a customer that I helped implement a sales comp. We designed their sales comp plans and then implemented them on a platform, one of the larger incumbents in the space. And about 8 months after I had left consulting, they'd reached out to me personally. And it was, at the time, the CFO of the Canadian division. And they reached out, and I told Max, I was like, I just got asked to help because they're scrambling. And I actually went back to the consulting firm that I worked at, and I said, I don't want to take your customer away. Like, I didn't leave consulting to take away from the firm. And one of the partners said to me, who owned the account at the time, said, no worries, like, we don't know it. You know the implementation, you did the project, so go help them. But are you sure you want to go into sales comp for the rest of your life? And I didn't appreciate it at the time. I realize now what the thankless nature of it. But at that time, I told Max, I was like, I'm getting asked for this favor, and I need 3 to 4 months to help them out. And so I turned into a part-time role, did the consulting engagement to help them stand up their software and their sales comp process. And that was when I realized, okay, you know what, I think there's something here, and it kind of eventually led to me pitching them on the radical approach that I wanted to take in sales comp.
So you have your potential first customer, you have an idea, and you had your previous experience where you're worried about getting something, let's call non-lifestyle business. So how did you know this was the idea? Because again, no one really grows up thinking, I want to be a sales comp expert. How did you know there was a market? How did you know you had a repeatable product? Like, what gave you the confidence to actually pull that trigger?
A lot of optimism. And I say that because I think starting a business is like, I think every other founder, it's not easy. And I look back, and there's this. I keep on going back to this saying, like, success comes when chance meets preparedness. There's a lot of things that were very positive that happened to us. Things at the right time, at the right moment. I mean, getting a Fortune 500 to knock on your door begging you for help is not something that an average founder that's selling into the enterprise space is going to get. So honestly, to be very clear, I left Spoonity after getting that consulting engagement because I told Max, I don't think I'm going to be the right person. You need to hire someone to fill this role. And so I was like, I'll do part-time until that happens. So from that January 2016, until August, I was like, I'm going to start a business. And I want to start my own company. And every month, I had a bunch of ideas. And every month, I would kick off at the beginning of the month. Some were with different co-founders, potential co-founders. And I'd kick off the month with, here's an idea that I have. And I'm going to sprint as fast as possible until I get to a no. And if I can't get to a no by the end of the month, then I'm going all in. And maybe it's a little bit of a blind. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that's good advice, by the way. So please, yeah. But at that point, I was going through these ideas, and I had a variety of different ideas. One of the ideas that one of my the potential co-founder and I, a good friend of mine from high school, was effectively Neighborhood Watch, but through a digital platform that was autonomous. So effectively, you subscribe in, and once you subscribe in, for a fee, then if we get enough of a neighborhood subscribed, then effectively that neighborhood is now neighborhood watched, and effectively you can use resources as humans to watch the cameras until you build up the autonomous machine, right, the visual learning. And that was an example of an idea where I think we actually went around and knocked on doors, and people were willing to sign up for $5 a month. And so I was like, okay, we can actually scale this. But it's a hardware business. I didn't have any credibility as a founder to be able to raise enough capital to do it. And there was a small player at the time called Ring, and I was like, they could easily pivot their business, and I think I wouldn't be able to overcome it. So I had all these ideas, and we'd go through the month to get to the no. And the moment that I got to no, pivot to another idea. And it was actually the second time that the same Fortune 500 customer knocked on my door again, being like, I need your help again because its system's not working. And that's when I realized, this is kind of crazy. I have a customer potential here that I could build this idea. I think I could solve this problem. And every customer that I worked with in consulting had this exact same problem. It's kind of like the spreadsheet. Everyone's using spreadsheets. Well, I'll tell you, everyone uses spreadsheets in sales comp. So clearly the tools that were there are not working. And that's why I decided to dive in.
So you decided to dive in. How did you choose the team, and then how did you get your second customer? The first customer was at your door, so you didn't even have to do any go-to-market motion. You didn't have to knock any doors. You didn't get any $5 commitments. So how did you choose a team? How did you get that second customer?
So the team piece is interesting. So I effectively at that point, I didn't have a technical co-founder, and I'm technical by background. I'm not an engineer to build a full functioning platform. So I built the MVP of the commission calculator of the engine, but it wasn't a full front face, standalone product. So at that point, I put a job posting up for a founding engineer, and I interviewed a bunch of people. But one of the things that I did was I was like, we're not just going to dive into this. It's not good for either of us to commit to doing this unless we feel comfortable. And so we actually, I did a paid workshop to build an MVP. And so over basically 3 weekends, Jason and I worked on my dining room table, and we cranked out what was an MVP of the product. And it was a very slimmed down, it wasn't even close to the actual MVP of the full product. I just wanted to know, can I work with you? Are you willing to, you have a full-time job and you're willing to put in the effort on the weekends to crank out and do this with me? And it's very quick. Once you start doing that, it doesn't take, you can get past the interview stages very quickly. And one of the things that to me gave me the confidence, because I effectively took my own money and invested into the business at the beginning to hire the team, including Jason, was that when we were starting out, I was interviewing and I talked to quite a few engineers, and at that time Python wasn't as popular as it is today, which is fundamental. The code, one of in our tech stack, it was a very key decision that we had to make early on. And in my mind, I'm like, do we go with Java because we're selling to large enterprises, and we want to be more enterprise and have better testing and et cetera, all these things. And Jason was very quick to think about it from a technical perspective, but also and more importantly, being pragmatic as a founding engineer into the business decisions. And yes, we may take on a little bit more technical debt with Python versus building the infrastructure that you can potentially get with Java. So again, by the way, this is a different time. But it was very practical to what we could build in an 8-month span, which that's the other piece is I had a customer, yes, but they weren't really a customer until we actually built the product, which we had 8 months to do. So that hiring decision, that first one was very key. And then the second question, second customer. So, oh man, this that's the hard part. First customer came to us, so that's a very different story, right? Second customer, we started actually selling in about 6 months in. So we were built V1 of the product, we had to launch 8 months. 6 months in, we're like, okay, we're gonna actually now try to selling this. And I remember Miles on our team, and I'll tell this story, he'll probably hate me for saying this, but we were basically hitting like, okay, we had a call script, we were calling, we were dialing, there's no auto dialers at least that we knew of at the time, and so you're kind of dialing manually out to all these companies, and he's like, it's not working, bless you, it's not working, and I can't get someone on the line, like, I think we have to try something else. I was like, no, we have to do this, by the way, because in my previous company, like, I had cold called, and that's how we closed deals. And so, so I basically picked up the phone. I kid you not. This is like just blind luck. Picked up the phone. First dial I make, I get a VP of sales on the phone. And I booked a meeting. I kid you not. I look back. It was so, just to be very clear, booked this meeting. I was like, that's how it's done. We need to do more dials. Definitely not true. I think dialing is really hard, and the best part was we jumped on, back to Ross's point around like constantly iterating on your sales process. I jumped on this meeting, and we're so excited. This is literally the first meeting that's outside of our network, right? Like we had meetings with people that we knew, but this is the first sales meeting where it was like brand new person that we never met before. And we jumped on the call, and I basically, this is before like Zoom, so we used the platform called Uber Conference. So it was like, just like phone effectively conferencing. And so first 15 minutes, purely me talking. Okay, not a good way to sell. And then I said something, and the guy just stopped me, and he was like, listen, everything you just said, I almost fell off my chair because I almost passed out. But what you just said in the last sentence intrigued me. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to like really double click on that. And we ended up getting another meeting, and then in the other meeting, again, we didn't get them over the line. But I actually asked that individual, he was VP sales, and I was like, I need to learn from this. And so I actually asked him at the end of that call where he said no. I was like, hey, like are you open to giving me advice and feedback? And I would drive up. It was a company that happened to be in Toronto. I would actually drive up. It was like an hour away with traffic to meet with him like a few times a month for the next few months to just get input. Like this is like how we learned and we iterated, and like what better than someone who just told you no, and then they get to know the product. I never ever ended up selling them, but yeah.
So you didn't tell me how you got the second customer.
That was the second failed customer, you're right, yeah. So at this point, we tried. Like we got better at the messaging, we got better at the meetings, and again, just constantly iterating on the sales process. And we finally got this customer had effectively 14 key stakeholders that we outlined. We targeted each of them, personalized emails. Effectively, 14 people with multiple emails, we finally get someone to bite. It's the SVP of sales. And we jump on a call, and at this point, something we said, we got our messaging down a bit better, and it resonated. And so we had a follow-up meeting. And in that follow-up meeting, we're talking about sales comp, and sales comp is one of those things, it's the second largest cost center. And if you think about it, a really good comp plan, you want to really overpay your top reps and really underpay your bottom reps. So naturally, if you don't set it right, the pay curve is not equal, right? I can have half my team overperform significantly and half my team underperform. I only hit my business target, but I just spent 30% more than what I was budgeting to spend, and it's the second largest cost center. So this specific customer, they were basically, that exact scenario happened to them. And we didn't know this at the time, by the way. right? No one's going to tell you over 30% over budget on a first, second call. But it was one of those things where, in hindsight, knowing that, what ended up happening was we knew that there's a problem, and he was talking about budgeting, so we said the right things, and at the end, he's like, this is a really big problem. I'm just not sure I could trust a small company. Like, where do you guys, what's your background? And by the way, I didn't see as many hands about who knows Forma, and one of the biggest mistakes I did was stay stealth for too long. So hiring a marketer earlier is actually very, very important, and having that personality, to bring all the pieces together. But long story short, we're a small company. This is a $100 million plus revenue business. Are they really going to trust a small company with one of their biggest problems that they had? Like, it's a 30% increase in budget that impacted their valuation by 25%, right? Because it's a PE-based business, PE-owned business. Your valuation is based on EBITDA. You take a profitability hit, you're going to take a valuation hit. Am I really going to trust a small startup with it? And what we said was, look, give us your data. We'll run it through our platform. And if you don't like what you see, at least you can take that and learn. We'll come back and we'll present you the findings, and then we can decide if we want it to move forward. And I look back and I'm like, it's very smart of this executive to have done this, because he effectively tested us. We got the data at 5 p.m. on Friday, and we said 2 days. So they scheduled a meeting for the readout on Monday. So it was like, okay, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we knew 2 days was like we didn't sleep. Like, when I say we didn't sleep, like, as a team, we basically worked through the weekend. We came back, we presented the outputs of the readout of their comp plans, and we didn't know anything about the over budget, but we predicted that they were going to be significantly over budget. And at that point, they only knew that they were going to be about 10% over budget, and we're like, you have a real problem on your hands. You could be even higher, like 25% plus. And it was at that point that they chose us, and they actually chose to work with us over some of the larger consulting firms, like the household names. And I think primarily it was two reasons. One, and looking back, I've asked this question, it's very important to talk to your customers as you scale. They chose us because, one, we were willing, he knew as an executive buyer, these individuals are not going to sleep to make sure this gets done. And so there's incentive alignment. They are incentivized to do good here. And second piece is the fact that at the end of the day, we were able to get very close to diagnosing their problem with very little data to start. So,
I want to open it to the audience, but I want to give you two quick questions. One, we talked a lot about the beginning. Where's the company today? Like, whatever metrics or however you want to describe where you are today, because that was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. So today we are a global company. We have an office in Toronto. We have team members across the US, and we opened an office in Pune, India, about a year ago now almost. We support sales comp for Fortune 500s, processing billions of dollars in sales comp for tens of thousands of sellers. And I would say, when I started the company, we were building the autonomous machine. It still required a lot of people to support that, right? Kind of the human in the loop. And I'd say every day we're getting closer and closer to that fully autonomous machine. And I'm sitting up here as a founder, and I say, it's a lot of hard work to get to here. I think I still look at everything that needs to be done, and I'm like, it is still a lot of hard work to get to the next stage.
One last question before I open to the audience. Might be a bit longer, but you can give me a short summary. How's sales changed? One thing you'll hear, especially in this tech community, is that AI is going to do selling. Everything. We've gone through COVID, so people don't meet as much in person. So sales fundamentally changed in the last 5 years. What's the big difference, if any?
So, in the last 5 years, I think, quite a bit. There's so many changes that have happened with the pandemic and going remote. I actually think at the very beginning it helped because you built a relationship face to face with some executives that would have taken you many, many meetings before you got to meet them in person and things like that. So I think that was helpful. But I would say it's becoming more personalized, and it has to be, because otherwise you're not going to catch the attention. There's so much automation that exists that if you don't make it about the individual, you don't make it personalized. Right now with the downturn, I think finance and the senior executive team is a part of every decision. So that kind of slows down deals unless you actually build into the sales process to bring those executives to the table, especially when we're selling large ACV, 6-figure, 7-figure deals. So it further accentuates that kind of stress. And then especially because of the economic environment that we're in, you really have to understand your buyer's pain and to be able to build a business case that can get past finance. So. Okay, so there's so many competitive companies to us. Or so many similar companies? How do we stay competitive? So I don't actually believe there's any other company that's doing exactly what we're doing. There's a lot of companies that play in a sales comp space, but every company is taking the approach of, I'm going to give you an interface for you to codify your rules and codify your plans. If I told you have 10,000 sellers and you want to build an individualized plan for every single seller, do I need 10,000 analysts to sit and monitor every rep's data in real time and configure the plans as they make a change? So the way that we're approaching it is we're building the autonomous machine to configure the plans, analyze the data, present the insights to the customer before they even know there's a problem, and the solution at the same time. So it's effectively, I think there's a lot of companies that are making cars, if we use that analogy. It's not that many companies that are making autonomous cars. So yeah, I mentioned that I posted for founding engineer role. Where did I do that? So at that time, I actually posted it on, I'm trying to think, it might have been like Kijiji combined with, yeah. I think it posted a bunch of different places, but Kijiji, I posted on some job boards like Mars. At that time, we used I'm trying to think if we used any other platforms. But the best part was that was the founding engineer, okay? So I got Jason in. But then we used, at that time, Hacker News, like YC's, yeah, to post for original. That was our first, 2 core engineers after that. We got through that, and it was actually we got the best talent, because basically what we did was we posted stealth startup. This is what we're doing. Are you do you want to come work? And it was like night and day, the talent that we got. I don't think it's the same level of quality posting there, but. So it's good. Yeah, it's quick. Okay, when did I quit my job, and how much of my own money did I put into the business? So 2 things there. I think one, I had already quit my job. So I quit my job in December, right? I left Spoonity, and at this point, I had decided I was going to effectively figure out a company that I wanted to start. How much my own money I put into the business is a very difficult one to answer, and I'll explain why. Because there's an opportunity cost. Had I stayed in consulting, where would I have been versus where I was a year into the business? And so I think there's an element of I didn't draw a salary, right, for a long time, or I drew the bare minimum so that I could have in fact, anyways, okay, there's really no salary. Money would come in, I would put it right back into the business. That is only possible because, one, I had effectively a previous business and I had saved up in my career, but it's not a nominal amount, it was the hundreds of thousands. So, that kind of, when you do that, it does push and make you question, okay, am I doing the right, I would say that the sweet isn't sweet without the bitter, and that's very true with the founder's journey. The days that are great, it feels amazing. You sign that second customer, I can't tell you, I think that was one of the happiest moments. But at the same time, there are days where it's, we maxed out every single, there was a period where I maxed out every single line of credit that I had because a customer didn't pay us. And I had to actually call them and say, if you don't send me a check tomorrow, there is no business. Do you need our product? Yes. You need to get your finance team to send us the check. And that's not a call that you want to make, but as a bootstrap founder, you have to do that. And I think that's, yeah, so, and I didn't give you an exact number, but hopefully that helps.
Hi, Nabeil. This is Rahul. I'm a B2B sales professional. Good to know someone's thinking about salespeople's compensation. So my question is there a difference during different phases, like during growth, there's a focus on paying high performers, or like times like these? Because I'm seeing a trend where the focus is more on distribution to more number of salespeople so that you get retention. Do you see such priority differences from businesses?
So just to confirm, you're asking, like, am I seeing a shift just broadly in sales comp to more like retention of reps versus paying for high performance? I think in bad businesses, yes. But the best businesses are going to pay more to retain their best sales performers. I mean, a good sales performer, and you look at what happened in Salesforce layoffs, right? 80% of the revenue was coming from what? Like, it was like literally the 80-20 rule. And I think it's a very strong, tell. Sales is not hard, and I we talk about this at our company. Sales is one of those roles where, if you think about other roles in the business, if you can make a little bit of mistakes, you can make a mistake, you get a little bug. Most mistakes are not catastrophic. In sales, and especially enterprise sales, you make one mistake in a sales process, you've burned that deal. And so it's not an easy job. And so when you have a good performer, you want to retain them. Yeah, so how do you reconcile customers' demands for product roadmap versus what you're looking to build? This is actually, it is a tough question because there's not a perfect answer, right? I think you have to always ask, like, why are you asking for this? It could be that your product's not servicing a need. The other thing is sometimes they're asking for it for another reason, and then you need to solve it, right? Like, I'll give you an example. It's not even customer number 5. Literally a month ago, we had a customer ask for something, and they were adamant that this is something that they absolutely needed. But the interesting thing is again, it's like we are in the business of solving this problem. Like, you typically pick a vision that you're looking to solve. I'm solving this problem, and I want to do it the best, in the best possible way. And so, I had to go to. It was a good conversation with the team because we're not looking to say no to the customer, right? That's not the right way to go do it. It's educating the customer as to why we have chosen in our product roadmap to solve a different problem than that one and solve it a different way. And what's interesting is, in that case, in this specific anecdote that I'm talking about, that meeting, it went from a customer that was like very adamant to having this, and almost like hostile to like making sure that they got this feature, to all of a sudden, it was, you're absolutely right, okay, this is not the direction we want to go. I think in customer like 5, you have to ask yourself, you have to ask 10 more questions back to them to uncover the root cause of what they're solving, because it might actually be amazing feedback for you to build the product in a different direction. So yeah, it really depends. The one thing I'll add, and I think this is something that like is so amazing about working in tech, or really it doesn't matter if it's tech or not tech, but one of the things that like we talk about as a team is when you're solving a problem at a global scale, you're effectively competing at that level, right? And I think there's something so rewarding about working in an organization where you have that passion of like, we are going to do sales comp better than anyone else in the world because we're so passionate about solving this problem. And I think if you can get to that state and you're competing at that global level, then you become the thought leader, and it just helps these conversations around product so much more.
So one last question, because was still lots of hands. How can people get in touch with you to ask you questions?
I would say, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help. I got a ton of, like I just said many times today, I got tons of help in my early days of founding Forma, and to this day, I still, there's lots of advisors that are pivotal and key to the business. So I'm happy to help where I can. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and yeah.
Let's get a round of applause. the end.